We're starting a little bit late, but we will start. My name is Mark Tokola. I'm the Vice President of the Korea Economic Institute. KEI was founded in 1982 for the purpose of promoting U.S.-Korean relations. If you'd like to see more of what we do, we have a lot of programs and activities and social media. I refer you to our website at keia.org. This morning we have a session on the first Trump-Moon Summit and the future of U.S.-Korea relations. We have a spectacular panel for you. But before that, we have the great honor of having a former ambassador of the United States and former Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, Ambassador Han Duck-soo. Ambassador Han?
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming to this. I hope that somewhat constructive and informative occasion for all of you. For the last 2 days, under the sponsorship of KEI, Korean and U.S. so-called opinion leaders gathered together and had a seminar discussing on a wide range of issues concerning Korea-U.S. relations. Everybody knows that Korean Peninsula is faced with a lot of challenges now, and certainly Korea-U.S. relations, which is characterized by long-term and strong and robust alliance relationship, is the key, we believe, to meeting the challenges on the Korean Peninsula, and we can go further to Northeast Asian region and to the world. So Korea's President Moon, after just 2 months after his inauguration, visited Washington, D.C., and I believe had a very successful summit meeting with President Trump. Their interactions are not just limited to the meetings in Washington, D.C. I think it was extended to Germany under the name of G20. There's a lot of bilateral summit meetings there, and of course there is another trilateral interactions among Korean presidents and President Trump and Prime Minister Abe. And I think also President Moon met Chinese President Xi and Russian presidents. So he actually made a tour of all the definitely and necessarily required interactions with world leaders concerning the Korean Peninsula. Especially important was, of course, the summit meeting between President Trump and President Moon. There was a lot of concerns about what would be the outcome of their interactions, because the situations were so dire on the Korean Peninsula. How to coordinate the policies between the United States and Korea are crucial to the satisfactory solutions in the future of the issues that are challenging us. I would like to say about 5 points. They made it very clear that U.S.-Korea alliance will play the crucial role in defending South Korea and Japan and the stability in the region. So they made a strong commitments to defending U.S. allies, and United States made a strong commitments that they will use all the conventional and nuclear capabilities to defend the allies in the region. The second was that how to discuss the ways how to tackle and counter the provocations by the North. They agree that sanctions is a part of diplomacy. So apply maximum pressure, and sanctions, they hoped and they agreed will lead to some form of peaceful solutions which may ignite the dialogue and negotiations among related parties with the North. So sanctions and negotiations are not the mutually exclusive term, but rather it was a complementary terms linked together. The third one is this kind of combination and getting out the maximum impacts from relevant sanctions and some of the change, the dynamics of the North Korea will be based on very, very close coordination of policies between the United States and Korea. So they agree that they will institute a lot of high-level talks, high-level, arena for coordinating their policies, so that there may be no daylight in their common, the countering the problems on the Korean Peninsula. And on the economics, they agree that Korea-U.S. economic relations are win-win, and their cooperations in the future in the third countries will be also very much desirable. And they committed strongly that by promoting the economic relations between the United States and Korea, they will not only spur growth, but also the jobs for the people of the two countries. So trade will be very important, and investments will be very important too. And they reviewed how the economic situations between the two countries are going. And although they do not have a full agreements on what they will do on FTA, but certainly they agree that they will consult to review how the FTA is going and what kind of actions are necessary for promoting economic relations between the two countries. So what I can conclude from Trump and Moon summit is that total agreements on the strength of our alliances and strong commitments from the United States to defend Korea and its allies, and also promoting the economic relations in the future, not on the basis of bilateral relations, but extending their applications to the third countries. So with the summit, we came to believe that US and Korea will be one, and they will together join their efforts in making the stability and prosperity in the Northeast region, not only on the Korean Peninsula, so that they can contribute to the peace and stability of the world. So with that, I would like to conclude my short remarks, and maybe the real experts from now on will really respond all your, the points to be clarified that will be raised by you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Han. That was an extraordinarily useful insight into the summit. Let me introduce now our Senior Director for Trade and Congressional Affairs at KEI, Troy Stangeron, who will be introducing our panel and moderating the discussion. So, Troy?
Well, good morning, and thank you again to Ambassador Han for opening things up today and being here today with us to talk about the summit and the future of the relationship between the United States and South Korea. I'll be just very brief. You have their extended bios there. I have Abraham Denmark, who used to be the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for East Asia at the Department of Defense. I have Chae Kong, who's the Vice President of the Asan Institute. Next to him, Bruce Klingner, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and then Dr. An Se-young of Sogang University. As Ambassador Han said, there has been a lot of interaction over the last 2 or 3 weeks between President Moon and President Trump. They've had the first summit here. They had the chance to meet at the G20 as well, and then the trilateral meeting with Prime Minister Abe. What we'd like to do is sort of maybe walk through some of what's happened, maybe in a little bit more detail, and kind of look at sort of how, now that our two countries have two new presidents, how the relationship looks going forward. So what I'd like to do is just start, and maybe we'll start with you, Abe, and just move down. Just sort of a few brief remarks on how you think, what your initial impression is of the first summit between President Trump and President Moon.
Sure. Thanks, Troy. Thanks to KEI for having me here and inviting me to join this panel of very good experts. I thought the summit actually went fairly well. There was certainly the potential for problems, considering where the two presidents are coming from politically. But the meeting went well, and I think mostly because both sides wanted the meeting to go well. But beyond that, I think if you look at the statements that came from both sides after that, you really have the tale of two summits. And Bruce has written on this, I think, very well. From the American statements, they talked a lot about how the South Koreans are on board for pressure and sanctions, reaffirmed THAAD, and a very sort of muscular interpretation of the summit, whereas statements coming out of the ROK officials talked about American support for the ROK to lead, that the problem will be resolved through dialogue, and that the ROK feels that they're in the driver's seat. And it's not an unusual case in which both sides hear what they want to hear. But to me, overall, I thought the message, the interpersonal interaction between the two was fairly good. And I guess, time will tell to see the substance and how that plays out.
Actually, I agree with what Abe said. You said fairly well. I say relatively well. Actually, initially we actually had a relatively low expectation out of this summit because there are some actually we expected some kinds of problem we have, like what would be the position of each country on THAAD, those kind of issue, as well as FTA. Actually, we were able to minimize the impact of all those things, and then it was a fairly good start between the two leaders. Actually, I saw a great opportunity for two leaders to be more clear on each other and also understand each other. But actually, the summit has left a lot of homework for both sides. Like, for example, it seems to me that the devil's in the detail. How we are going to make a balance between the pressure and dialogue, under what condition we are going to start the dialogue. What should be the agenda if the dialogue starts. That kind of things to be ironed out at the follow-up the meetings. But actually, one point I like to underscore, unlike the previous summit, actually this summit produced the measures to be institutionalized, 2+2 meetings and also the high-level meetings on extended terms issues like that. I think through those meetings, we will be able to come up with more concrete ideas to implement what has been agreed between the two leaders. But the problem with external factors will affect greatly the outcome of this summit. So it is a good start. So a lot of work to be done in the future. But we cannot be sure 100% whether we can maintain that current posture into the future. So keep fingers crossed, but we should be aware of kinds of turbulence sometimes. So that's my initial understanding of the summit.
Thank you. I think you'd look at it in sort of 4 phases: long before the summit, right before the summit, and then after the summit. Long before the summit, right after Moon's inauguration, I think many of us, certainly I, had concerns about what an eventual summit would be like. You know, given Moon's, I think, true thoughts on engagement and dialogue and the conditionality for when he would engage North Korea and start catapulting money north of the DMZ again. And then, but running up close to the summit, we had much better expectations. Trump had, if not abandoned, at least put in abeyance his comments about the views of the alliance and the conditionality of U.S. support, military support, trade, and the reimbursement for our forces. And Moon, I thought, certainly had moved to the center on his comments about North Korea. He acknowledged that reopening Kaesong would be a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. He seemed to, I think, be adopting a conservative point of view on North Korea. And to the progressives in the South Korea, had Park Geun-hye said those same things, that she would have been lambasted for being so hardline. So a bit of a double standard there. And then the summit itself, I thought, went very well until President Trump was sort of the dark cloud on the otherwise sunny day of, at a time when you're standing next to your alliance, and I think all the alliance managers had been prepping the presidents like, okay, happy thoughts, go to your happy place, just say nice things. And then Mr. Trump was sort of like, yeah, my buddy here, terrible trade, he's got to pay us for the troops. And it was sort of I'm sure, some cringes amongst the U.S. Alliance managers. And then afterwards, it does sort of make you wonder if they attended the same summit. Trump says, yeah, they agreed to renegotiate KORUS. President Moon, when he got back, said, look at the joint statement. If it ain't in the same statement, it didn't happen. And then Moon, I think, is seeing I'm going to interpret the statement as the U.S. Acquiesced to me taking I'm in the driver's seat on all peninsular issues, not just unification. But I can also almost imagine Moon saying, okay, look, it's Saturday, I just got back. Look, I'm going to go full bore on engagement. It's Saturday, I've got some jet lag. Okay, staff, why don't we get together, say, Tuesday morning, July 4th. We'll plan, all of our moving forward, engagement, and all this. And then Tuesday morning staff meeting will be like, sir, they launched an ICBM. Things aren't going well for engagement. And he'd just be once again cursing the North Koreans for, constraining his ability to re-engage, not only all the missiles that they've launched since his inauguration, but also rejecting Moon's initial attempts at dialogue, even humanitarian assistance. I mean, North Korea won't even let them, toss benefits to the North. And to me, that's very similar to when President Obama came in 2009, and he was extending an open-handed dialogue. Everyone had been blaming George Bush for the stalemate between North Korea and the U.S., and North Korea showed it was going to act just as badly to Obama as to Bush, and now they're showing they're going to act just as badly to Moon as to Park Geun-hye and Lee Myung-bak. So to me, it affirms North Korea is the problem, not the policies of U.S. or South Korea.
And badly to Trump.
So President Trump and Moon discussed basically two issues. Regarding alliance issue, much better outcome than originally expected. But when it comes to trade issue, at the last summit meeting, two leaders skillfully avoided direct conflict. So, as you know, President Trump repeatedly insisted on renegotiation of KORUS FTA, and our President Moon responded by emphasizing U.S.-Korea FTA is mutually beneficial. So, U.S. market share in Korea is on the way up. U.S. service export to Korea is on the way up. And bilateral volume of trade between United States and Korea is on the way up. So in this sense, our president emphasized KORUS FTA mutually beneficial. But as Dr. Jae mentioned, a lot of hard homework to narrow this gap. So I think that is the reason why yesterday USTR announced the request of opening special joint committee to discuss the methods affecting operation of KORUS FTA. I think to open dialogue between United States and Korea is better than not open dialogue. Okay, thank you.
So, Abe, I'd kind of like to start where Bruce is sort of left off to an extent. He said he had these phases, and that on July 4th, the North Koreans test the ICBM. Russia and some other countries have suggested that this isn't really an ICBM, Setting aside how we classify this, I mean, given your experience at DoD, what progress has North Korea really made in its missile development? And how should we be viewing this? And what steps should the alliance be taking to counter this growing progression on their side?
Thanks, Troy. Yeah, in our popular media, on the internet, there has been a lot of humor surrounding North Korea's missile developments for a long time. That they'd conduct a test, it would blow up on the pad, or it would blow up pretty soon after launch, and people would make jokes about how terrible it was and how lousy their missiles were. When I was in the Pentagon, one of the points I kept making, and one of the points I made since I left, was that there's really no such thing as a failed test if you learn something. And clearly, North Korean rocket scientists have been learning, and they conduct a test. If it fails, they figure out why. They figure out how to fix it. They test it again, and clearly they've made really tremendous progress in their missile developments over the past several years. I think there's a lot of Sturm und Drang in the academic community and in the policy community about whether or not this is technically an ICBM. And I have the similar attitude as you. Whether or not it's technically an ICBM or not, I think, is beyond the point of what its capability is and what it portends. I saw that the trilateral statement coming out of the G20 didn't say it was an ICBM. They said it was a ballistic missile of intercontinental range, which I'm not sure what the distinction is, but clearly somebody thinks there's an important distinction there. It is a longer sentence.
It's words. It's a BMIC.
BMIC.
Oh, yeah. It's sort of a dyslexic.
Right. But to me, it clearly demonstrates that North Korea wants to have a credible ICBM, and they're making progress toward it. I think the key point, one of the key points for us, is that time is not on our side on this issue. That over time, North Korean rocket scientists are going to continue to improve, and eventually, I'm not sure when. I don't know if anybody knows when. They're going to figure it out. They're going to put all the pieces together. So there are things, there are some things that we could try to do that have been proposed in terms of diplomacy, in terms of trying to seek out a freeze, which personally I'm fairly skeptical on in that it's not very verifiable. But over time, this is a reality that is going to come true. At some point, they're going to figure it out. And so, we can, and I'm sure we'll have discussions about what that means for the United States, for our allies, and for the peninsula. But I think the message that should hit home is that this is not a joke, that this is a real capability, that they can already strike our allies. With a different missile, it looks like they'll be able to reach Guam. And they're making progress toward being able to reach Alaska, Hawaii, perhaps the West Coast. But eventually, I think over time, eventually they're going to figure out how to have a real ICBM capability. And then we're in a different world.
Yeah, and I actually was going to ask you one other thing, too, because in your opening remarks, you had brought up the point of that, on July 4th, in the supposed meeting, that, while this hinders our challenge or our ability to do this, at the summit, President Trump, it seemed to endorse at least the idea of President Moon trying to engage in dialogue with North Korea. How much does this really constrain him going forward?
I think it just sort of picking up on Abe's comments on the missile itself. What I found over the years is, for whatever reason or reasons, there's been a tendency to downplay or dismiss or reject North Korea's missile program or North Korea's military programs. Originally it was the plutonium program, and I remember one component of the intelligence community repeatedly would deny that they had a plutonium program or deny that they had fissile material. Then it was the uranium program. Remember how it was just a figment of George Bush's imagination and that it couldn't possibly be happening. And then once the evidence came out, then you had it's not a program, it's a program to develop a program, as a way of downplaying it. Then there was the rejection that there was a reactor in Syria, that North Korea was involved. I remember the day after the attack, one expert on North Korea was saying it's a Scud missile storage area, and anyone that thinks it's a reactor is a disciple of John Bolton. Well, okay, it turned out to be a reactor. And now we have kind of that, North Korea just successfully completed something which before, was seen to be very important, but now it's not really important because I still think it's several years away before they can do X. And of course, they've been saying that for several years. So there does seem to be this downplaying. And now, it was an ICBM. The estimate is that, actually minimally 6,700 kilometers, because the expert who decided that later kind of said, I didn't take into account the rotation of the Earth. So, people are now saying, 7,000, 9,000 clicks. And the thing is, I think what, people are saying, well, it's only Alaska. Well, last time I checked, that's part of the U.S. But also, that's like saying, the little old lady driving the Maserati, she only drove it to 60 miles an hour, so that's the capability of a Maserati. Well, no. When experts were looking at the static rocket engine tests last year, and they could look at the engines, which were surprisingly better than they thought. The propellant was a surprise. It was better than they expected. And they said, before those photos were released, those experts were saying, we thought Pacific Northwest. But now they think of that KN-14 or whatever we're calling it now. Probably New York or Washington. So this thing is not just going for Alaska. It may already have the capability of the East Coast, or they will demonstrate it eventually. So I think, again, we're seeing this downplaying of the North Korean threat. As for how far Moon will, move forward, we don't know. What I find interesting is before the summit, when I talk to Korean colleagues, South Korean colleagues, and, I'd say, okay, what do you think? And they'll say, look, Bruce, don't be as concerned as you are about how far left Moon will be. Even if he wanted to be No Mu-han, he can't. It's like a wall has been built. You've got a nuclear North Korea. You have the 2 attacks in 2010. You've got the strongest South Korean public support for the alliance ever. It's like a wall that would prevent him from being as left as he might want to be. And I tell that analogy to other Korean friends, and they just kind of laugh and say, if there's a wall, he will jump over it or he will dig under it. So we don't really know what Moon's policies will be, but I certainly think North Korea's actions and rejections of even civil outreach is certainly going to constrain his ability, or if he has that desire to be Sunshine 2.0, I think North Korea's actions are certainly going to constrain it.
So, Dr. Chae, there is another side to this, which is the defensive side. And the deployment of THAAD has been something that has been controversial, but it was also something that people expected to be a flashpoint in the summit. Were you surprised that this didn't come up at all, apparently? And also, do you think that because of that, we're at a point to where perhaps despite the environmental study, they're going to be able to move past these issues and it will be completely deployed?
Okay, before answering your question, let me add my thought on this North Korea's capability. North Korea is driven by the political way, not the technological development. So Kim Jong-un has set the date for the completion of ICBM. That's December of this year. So I'm sure there will be more tests to show their capability. And maybe, I don't know, there will be the nuclear warhead-tipped ICBM. That's the final goal. Maybe we are entering a maybe even worse situation, so we should be ready to tackle that issue, not just simply just focusing on this immediate problem. So I think the more foresighted preparation is very necessary at the moment, and also that's very key. And also over the years, North Korea has been applying their own way to overcome technical barriers. So we should not underestimate their creativity in overcoming all the technical barriers. So we used to apply the Western standard in estimating North Korea's capability. So when there was a SLBM test, it will take another 5 years for North Korea to master SLBM. No, they did it in 1 year. ICBM, I talked with guys from the STRATCOM. They said, it will take at least 10 years for them to master. They complete in 3 years. So we should not underestimate the North Korea's capability and intention to master this ICBM. That's their final goal. So whether we have any kinds of plan to live with nuclear-armed North Korea, that's the question we have to address. So we have to think about crafted more comprehensive way to deal with North Korean challenge ahead of us. That's my added thought on the North Korean capability. On that issue, actually before this summit, and President Moon and also the Minister Kang Kyung-hwa emphasized we are not going to reverse the decision. Only we are going to enhance the legitimacy of this decision by following the democratic and procedural process. That's the question. Whether we will be able to expedite the deployment of a whole set on one battery of THAAD system, I don't know, because this is going to be more domestic issue rather than the issue between the two allies. But I'm sure because unfolding situation on the Korean Peninsula right after the ICBM test, maybe this is an opportunity for us to revisit the decision, how we, not actually reverse the decision, how we are going to expedite the process. And then we have to think about, in the summit, President Moon Jae-in actually as we need more assured extended deterrent measures to be more safer in defending ourselves. So maybe in that regard, we have to think about what we can do beyond the THAAD. And then, of course, there's a great resistance in Seongju area. There's the site where we are going to deploy THAAD. And there are more people are arguing for more THAAD, not just only one battery, but maybe it's at least a couple more or three more THAAD. But that's not popular at the moment. But because of unfolding North Korean threat, there will be more argument for the deployment of THAAD. But THAAD is not just the complete set of our defense. What kinds of additional capability we need? That's the question we have to discuss with American side, along with the THAAD issue.
So, Dr. Che raised something earlier in his remarks there that I think is something I just want to kind of briefly, before we move to like the FTA, get Bruce's and Abe's thoughts on, which is, you know, there is a very distinctive possibility that the North Koreans will complete an ICBM before we are able to bring them back to the table or get them to roll it back. You know, how do we prepare for sort of this reality that we're going to maybe have to live with a ICBM nuclear-armed North Korea, at least for a period of time?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge we're already living with a nuclear-capable North Korea that can threaten today our South Korean and Japanese allies. You know, I kind of wonder how our allies are reacting when we're sort of sending the signal of, well, yeah, when they could nuke our allies, that was, yeah, sort of important. But now that they may be able to hit America, now it's really important. It's sort of, you know, guys, we should be focusing on, you know, it's the alliance and that they've already been able to threaten our allies. So, but certainly, I think in the last year, we've had a much greater discussion and perhaps even advocacy for a preventative military attack option. You know, and that's different from a preemption where you think your opponent's about to attack you, so you preempt them. Preventive is to prevent them from completing development of an ICBM. So, you know, I've written on my idea of safe preemption for imminent North Korean military attack. You know, but you see, you know, folks talking about it. I think it's not so much in the executive branch, but in Congress and the media and the pundits and stuff. And I think people underestimate the casualty numbers and the certainty or likelihood of an all-out war on the peninsula if you do even a limited military attack. So, you know, I mean, just the short version, I guess too late now, but, you know, would be if you've got, you know, I'm against a preventative attack, and I think on negotiations we always leave the door open, but North Korea has made very, very clear that it's not going to denuclearize. You know, they've said denuclearization is totally off the table. There's nothing the U.S. or Seoul can offer. So stop, you know, aggravating us by continuing to try that. So, you know, what I've argued is you need to make sure you have, you know, increase your pressure. Stop pulling our punches on a number of things, but then also have sufficient defenses to defend yourself and your allies. And because I think we're in it for the long haul, as we were with the Soviet Union. There's no magic combination where we can solve it overnight. So we have been in it for the long haul, and we're going to be in it for the long haul. But we need to, you know, contain, constrain, pressure, try to, you know, alter the regime's behavior, and then put at risk what they treasure most, which is regime stability.
Yeah, I think Bruce has it just about right. they're thinking ahead to North Korea having some version of a credible nuclear ICBM capability. I'm actually not concerned about strategic deterrence. Deterrence has worked since the 1950s in various forms, and I have no reason to believe that strategic deterrence wouldn't work. What my concern would be on conventional deterrence. That my fear would be that with a credible nuclear ICBM, that North Korea would try to drive wedges between us and our allies, would feel that they could more safely conduct conventional level provocations against the South, against Japan, feeling that no country would go to war with them because of their nuclear capabilities. And so I would want to focus both in terms of what Bruce said about changing some of the military calculus, being able to hold at risk what they hold dear, but also enhancing conventional deterrence as well as sustaining strategic deterrence. Which is why I think it's been a mistake to focus so much on THAAD. THAAD is actually one piece of a much more complex, a much more sophisticated array of defense capabilities that the United States and Korea have fielded. And as the North Korean threat continues to evolve, I would argue that we're going to have to do more. We're going to have to ensure that we have the ability to defend ourselves and defend our allies. So in some ways, THAAD is not focusing on THAAD is focusing on the wrong thing. Our two militaries do and should continue to evaluate the threat and make decisions about what we need to defend ourselves and our allies. And I get concerned when looking at the political process and the political concerns happening in Korea. I get concerned about the precedent that it sets, that when our military leaders decide that to defend our people, we need some other capability, I think that the political ramifications of those could weaken our ability to defend ourselves and to defend our people. And so I want to make sure that our militaries are still free to make those assessments and to make those decisions, and that both leaders on both sides will be able to support their decisions to ensure that we're able to defend from a very real and evolving threat from North Korea.
Actually, I agree with Abe, but I'd like to add a couple of points. Actually, on conventional threat, we have forgotten the gravity of North Korea's conventional threat vis-a-vis South Korea. But nowadays, I think North Korea has more long-range artillery pieces deployed along DMZ. I don't know exactly number targeted at the metropolitan area, but maybe around more than 1,000 pieces are targeted to the capital area. The casualty maybe at least sometimes about 50,000, maybe sometimes 500,000. Depends on what kinds of munition they're going to use. That's a serious problem. The other problem we have to think about is the chemical and biological threat. So actually last year, the Kim Jong-nam assassination in Malaysia actually highlight North Korea's way of using the chemical component vis-a-vis to their target. So are we ready to handle this chemical and biological threat of North Korea? No. We have forgotten the chemical and biological threat of North Korea maybe for almost 15 years. We just focus on the nuclear missile. But actually a biological threat, very serious problem. So how we are going to handle it, that's the problem. On the strategic deterrence, there's some difference between U.S. and Korea on this issue. Of course, U.S. wants to maintain strategic ambiguity on the strategic deterrence. On the other hand, South Korea wants to be strategic clarity on the strategic deterrence. That's why South Korea argued for the deployment of the strategic asset, whether it's a rotational base or permanent. So that's an issue to be discussed. Not only deterrence vis-a-vis North Korea, but actual assurance to South Korean allies. That's why if there's no action taken by the United States, there'll be more people arguing for independent nuclear capability. So that's problematic. Don't worry, actually, there will be domestic resistance to the independent nuclear capability. Actually, there's no province want to host the nuclear facility in their area. Almost impossible. So I don't see any possibility. But actually, there's strong domestic resistance for that. But anyhow, emotionally, many people we argue for independent nuclear capability, or at least reintroduction of tactical nuclear weapons. So of course, U.S. doesn't want to redeploy the tactical nuclear weapons. But anyhow, there are people who want to be assured by the United States with concrete action, not just of course, we have been running these debates within the Extended Terms Committee. But anyhow, still, we need to have more concrete action taken by the United States to be assured. And also, we have to think about how North Korea will use their weapons under what circumstances. So maybe there will be more blackmail or bluffing kinds of things North Korea can use vis-a-vis South Korea. And also how we are going to handle this is going to be a critical issue. And I'd like to have the USFK to be upgraded to handle the ever-changing North Korean threat to a certain degree.
Yeah, sort of going back to Thad, I think President Moon is really trying to be on both sides of the fence at the same time. So, he's moved from his initial, advocacy for it to be the decision to be reversed to sort of his, oh no, I just think the next administration should take care of it during the campaign, and now he's saying he won't reverse the decision. Well, but then it's like, okay, sir, so you're acknowledging there's a North Korean nuclear threat to your nation now. You're acknowledging that THAAD is better than anything your country has or will have for decades. But you want to go through the paperwork of an environmental assessment, which some say could take a year or two. I'm pretty sure North Korea is not going to fill out the paperwork of, environmental impact statement of a nuclear attack, just a guess. So I think he's some Koreans have told me, well, the decision was a violation of South Korean democracy. Well, Abe can discuss better how the process of alliance military decisions are made, and that trying to reverse the decision either through the National Assembly or whatever would be, I think, a violation of the Status of Forces Agreement and the Mutual Defense Treaty, components. But also, we didn't put, when we deployed an M1 tank to replace the M60 or an F-15 plane to replace its predecessor, we didn't go through a national, decision-making process with 55 million South Koreans voting on it. So, it's an alliance decision. And now, as the 8th Army commander said yesterday, that where the THAAD is now is defending 10 million South Koreans. So kind of the question to President Moon would be, well, which are you more concerned with, protecting 10 million of your citizens or the environmental impact statement of whether the missile is going to hurt the golf course that it's deployed to? So, I think he's trying to appease both the alliance and his constituency. And I think he's going to risk alienating one or the other.
Did you want to?
Yeah. Very good comments here. I wanted to comment a little bit, build off of what Kang Choi is saying about reassurance. Reassurance is a natural and understandable aspect of any alliance relationship. It probably took me way too long to figure this out, about 10 years ago, but after many, many meetings with friends from alliance countries about reassurance, I eventually realized that it's a conversation you never get to the end of. That you never have the conversation, figure out the exact right deployments and talking points where they say, okay, I'm reassured, we don't have to talk about it anymore. I think it's a natural aspect of an alliance relationship, and it's okay. We did a tremendous amount when I was in the Pentagon to reassure our Japanese allies as well as our Korean allies, both publicly in terms of the flights of B-2s, B-1s, submarine visits, all sorts of things, as well as privately in terms of meetings with my counterparts in the Korean Defense Ministry and interactions between our two militaries. And this is a never-ending conversation. Are there things that the United States could do more to reassure our Korean allies? Absolutely. I think the Trump administration, to its credit, has continued to do a lot of the things that we were doing towards the end of the Obama administration. We saw just a few days ago a B-1 flew, I believe, from Guam and was escorted by Japanese fighters and then Korean fighters to visit Korea, and that's a demonstration of our capability. It's a demonstration of our will, and it's also it also points to the importance of the trilateral relationship. But we're going to have to do more, and my point is that's okay. That it's not a sign of weakness in our alliance that one side wants reassurance. It's a sign of strength that we're open enough with each other, that we're close enough with each other, that once I can just say, hey, I need some more reassurance. Let's figure out something that works. And the fact that 2 months later or 6 months later, whatever it is, they come back and say, we need to do something else. We need to figure out how to reassure again. It doesn't show that the alliance is weak. It doesn't show that the reassurance didn't work. It just shows that this is an aspect of alliance relationships that we just have to figure out how to live with, and it's okay.
Well, actually,
move on?
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. So, Dr. Ahn, at the summit, to go back for a moment, the one area, and we sort of, I think Bruce referred to it as the dark cloud of Trump, where there did seem to be differences between the two administrations was on the issue of trade. And yesterday, the Trump administration formally requested a meeting with Korea and the Joint Committee to discuss, reviewing the FTA and potential amendments. How is this process going to move going forward?
So, according to Article 22.2 of KORUS FTA, both parties are able to open annual joint committee, if necessary, special joint committee. So I think it is not a time to talk about renegotiation. I think the more important thing is that both United States and Korea work together to identify more mutually beneficial and win-win solution. So United States nowadays, particularly President Trump, very strict to bilateral trade imbalance. So Korea's trade deficit vis-a-vis United States have doubled over the last 5 years. So actually there are many ways to fix this problem. Korean companies invest more into United States, buy more from United States. So Korean business delegation, we came to United States with President Moon, announced that Korea will invest $22 billion into United States and buy around $13 billion from United States. So fortunately, we have a good solution. This is a shale gas revolution. United States become to export shale gas. As you know, Korea import almost all of energy from Middle East and Southeast Asia, Malaysia. So if Korea convert a part of its import source into United States, Korea's annual volume of energy import is $100 billion. So I think Korea's trade surplus vis-a-vis United States will be slashed down dramatically. And second point is that automotive issues. So this is tiresome and time-consuming is over more than 20 years. United States and Japan and Korea have been discussed on this automotive issue because U.S. chronicle trade deficit vis-a-vis Japan and Korea basically came from automotive trade. As you know, as some of you might know, in 1997, USTR announced Super 301 section on Korea's automotive market access. At that time, I was in Watergate Hotel with Korean Trade Minister when U.S. Ambassador Sharin Baspeski announced that. Since that, Korea has been making very sincere and continuous effort to enhance U.S. Big Three's market access in Korea. So as a result of such kind of effort, nowadays Big Three's market share in Korea jumped number 2 place after Germans. In the past, number 2 was Japanese. And the U.S. Big Three's market share in Korea is 2011 around 12%, now 20%. Very big progress. But I think Korea move more sincerely and more actively, if necessary, more proactive and unilateral step to fix existing pending trade issue between United States and Korea. Thank you.
So, Dr. Ahn, if I could just ask, maybe one or two more follow-up questions. Any talks on trade need not be one way; they can be two ways. What might be some key issues for Korea?
So I talked to the trade ministers in Seoul about the key issues. I think there are several key issues. So from Korean U.S. standpoint, American multinationals complain that there are some non-trade barriers in doing business in Korea. From our standpoint, Hyundai Group, Samsung Group, SK, they told me there is some barriers state by state. So Korean government is identifying such kinds of information and to slash down such kind of barriers. By doing so, Korean companies will be able to invest more into United States. Yes, thank you.
And then just one last thing, because I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. It's my understanding that you have a book which is available on Amazon on how to take and negotiate with Donald Trump.
Last January, I published the book. The title of that, How to Deal with Donald Trump. I expected big sales, but to my disappointment, very poor. I found Mr. Donald Trump is not popular among Korean people as I expected. So I enjoyed all his publications. President Trump's publication, Art of Deal like that. First, he is a hard negotiator. According to Harvard business model, very stick to his position, which he believes in. So when it comes to trade issue, I think why he is so stick to trade imbalance, particularly in merchandise. So he told, U.S. trade deficit vis-a-vis United States doubled to $27 billion. But when you put service balance, U.S. trade deficit slashed down to $17 billion US dollars. And the second point is that here, American first, he repeated 16 times in inauguration speech, but also creating American jobs is very important. And we agree, American jobs. In order to create American jobs, there are various ways, not trade imbalance. So encourage Korean companies to invest more into United States, and encourage Korean companies buy more from United States. Also, particularly, I told you, shale gas. Shale gas is very lucky point. So at this moment, U.S. shale gas is not so much attractive for Korea because long time we have been imported shale gas from Middle East. Our system, integrated system is Middle East oriented. But with the time, so there's some technology-related barriers and particular logistic-related barriers. If United States and we joint effort to fix such kind of problem, and our import from United States of shale gas will be dramatically increased. So both United States, President Trump, and all of us will be happier then.
Thank you. So we've got about a half hour left. And I do want to turn to questions, but there are two things that I want to bring up before we do. One, the trilateral side of things. Abe, under the Obama administration, they put a lot of effort into trilateral relations. We now have a new administration in Seoul. We have a new administration in the United States. How do you see the trilateral relationship developing going forward?
The most difficult aspect of the trilateral relationship has always been the relationship between Korea and Japan. And that relationship, of course, is not dictated by the United States, but rather is up to the leaders of those two countries. And both Prime Minister Abe and President Park, I think, demonstrated a great deal of leadership, vision, and political courage to sign the agreements that they signed. And clearly, President Moon has a different view than his predecessor. How that plays out in terms of practical cooperation in the security side, which is what I focused on, or on the diplomatic side, I think still remains to be seen. Clearly, the public opinion in Korea of trilateral cooperation with Japan is not high. Is 70%?
Yeah.
That's good. But is a problematic issue, is how I'd say it. And so, to me, in my engagements with my counterparts in Japan, my counterparts in Korea, there's a great deal of enthusiasm for security cooperation. They really understand the need for trilateral cooperation in a practical way, that the better we are at trilateral cooperation, the better we are at defending Korea, and the better we are at defending American forces in the region. So to me, what needs to happen is two things. First is there needs to be continued energy in the security sphere to continue to drive the three militaries to enhance their military cooperation with each other. We made terrific progress, as you mentioned, during the Obama administration, but there's still a lot to be done. It was really sort of the first steps in a much longer journey of trilateral cooperation. To me, though, the other piece, and I think the more consequential piece, is at the top level, that this sort of relationship needs energy and momentum and drive from the highest levels. And without it, trilateral cooperation will wither on the vine. So I'm watching for indications from Prime Minister Abe, from President Moon, and from President Trump that they're committed to this, that this is important to them, and they want to see their people drive it forward. The trilateral summit at the G20 I thought was a good first step, but it's going to require consistent, high-level engagement on this issue to ensure that the governments of all three, that the militaries of all three, continue to push this forward.
Okay, because I have been supporting this trilateral security cooperation, and also, to my memory, each and every president of South Korea since Kim Dae-jung, at the first day of inauguration, everybody said, I'd like to have a future-oriented partnership with Japan, including security cooperation. But maybe some months later, something happened, all the past history. But at this time, actually, President Moon Jae-in clearly stated that he liked to separate the security cooperation from the history issue. That's a good sign. But I like to see corresponding measures coming from Japan. The other thing I have to highlight, actually, we have enhanced the trilateral security cooperation for the past couple of years, especially on the missile side. Actually, we will continue to do so because of ever increasing North Korean threat, not only on Korea, but also Japan and the United States. Our security interests have become much more overlapped. So not only Japan, but also the United States is under the threat of North Korea. How that will impact South Korea's national security interest is going to be a critical issue to be discussed. So we want to have a joint plan to deal with North Korean challenge ahead of us. But anyhow, I cannot simply rule out the possibility of political atmosphere's impact upon security cooperation. That happened all the time. But for that, I think this public has been very supportive toward the trilateral security cooperation. Because of the Chinese response on several cases, China has become a less favored country than Japan nowadays. When ASEAN actually has conducted a public poll, the ranking order of favorability of each country, like the U.S., all the way up, China, Japan, North Korea. But nowadays, U.S., Japan, China, and North Korea. Actually, the order between Japan and China is reversed. So I don't think there's any dramatic change in that ranking order because we have seen some kinds of unsatisfactory reaction coming from China nowadays. So they will not stop that kinds of behavior in a short period of time. So I see still we have a good chance to enhance the security cooperation among three countries. The problem of trilateral security cooperation, the scope of trilateral security cooperation, we have been focusing more on the peninsula-wide security cooperation. Whether we want to go beyond the peninsula, that is going to be a controversial issue. Maybe regardless as orientation of each administration, whether it's conservative or progressive, no single Korean government wants to go along with the regional security cooperation because of China factor. But the people's understanding of China has become very different from previous. So sometimes I think South Korea has to make a clear choice. But actually, at the last period of the Park Geun-hye administration, actually, one good thing Park Geun-hye administration has made on the security front, she finally actually agreed on the freedom of navigation and also sided on the PCA ruling. That could be the beginning of regional cooperation among three countries, but I don't know how far we can go. It depends on the circumstances and problems we have actually.
Well, we've only got about 20 minutes left, so why don't we go ahead and turn to the audience. We have mics, if you would take, and please state your name and affiliation. Larry?
I'm Larry Nix from ICAS and CSIS. At the summit and also at the G20 meetings, did President Trump and President Moon discuss the issue of U.S. military exercises in South Korea in terms of how to respond and whether there could be a unified ROK U.S. response to both North Korea's demand that South Korea terminate the exercises and also a response to the Chinese-Russian dual freeze proposal, which would have the same effect on military exercises. And I would also ask for any of you to comment on your opinion as to how should we respond to the Russian-Chinese proposal. Should it be a flat no, or should it be a much more detailed response, going over the multifaceted reasons for the exercises? Now, one of the reasons I ask this question is that President Moon has proposed military-to-military South-North talks. If North Korea accepts that proposal, I have no doubt the North Koreans will use a negotiation like that to really press South Korea to suspend these military exercises. So has there been progress toward a unified ROK U.S. position, or is this still kind of up in the air in terms of especially what President Moon may try to do?
Actually, I'd like to make a clarification on what President Moon Jae-in said on the meal-to-meal talk. Actually, this meal-to-meal talk should be confined to the termination, maybe suspension of hostile activities along the MDL. Actually, the comprehensive, the tension reduction kinds of things. Very confined measures, immediately, maybe the loudspeaker broadcast kinds of things, not actually other kinds of military exercise. I think that's President Moon actually asked President Trump to do the missile test, the missile exercise, right at the ICBM test done by North Korea. So he has said, we need to do more in action, not in words. That was his word, not from me. So I was really surprised to hear that, anyhow. But actually, I think this the continuation of joint military exercise is a joint decision, not just a unilateral decision. So actually, it's a joint decision. So that's why we need to have a consultation. But at the moment, I don't see any possibility to exchange this moratorium with this military exercise. President Moon Jae-in actually completely denied that kind of possibility.
Right. On the flight over for the summit, President Moon said, "We're not cutting the military exercises for the freeze." And on North-South mill talks, North Korea refuses to pick up the phone at the joint security area. I mean, literally. So you have U.S. and South Korean military officers on the MDL with a megaphone yelling, "Please pick up the phone. We'd like to have a meeting at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Please come." And then, they have the tea and cookies out and they never show up. But so people keep talking, not only on the mill side, but on political side. We need to talk to North Korea. They're the ones who closed the New York Channel until they reopened it to return Otto Warmbier. They're the ones that don't pick up the phone, et cetera. So, we should always remain open to dialogue, but let's make sure we know who is the one that's been slamming the door on that. On the freeze, what should the U.S. response be to the Chinese military and previously North Korean offer? We've got a camera, so I won't use the hand gesture that the response should be. But it's clear it's not a viable opening position. They are trying to offer something they don't legally possess. They are not allowed to do missile and nuke tests, whereas we are allowed to do our military exercises. And what I've commented on, including to some North Korean officials, is at least start with an apples to apples offer. They do an annual winter training cycle. I used to watch it every year. It starts in December. It goes through March, April. It usually culminates in a core level exercise. That's a conventional military exercise. We have conventional military exercises. You could at least begin your offer by talking about, same things. So, they put constraints or transparency measures on their exercises. We do the same. Or even a lower bar than that is having discussions on confidence and security building measures like we had in the Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty and the CSBM Treaty in Europe, where it's transparency measures, it's notifications, it's perhaps an exchange of observers. If you're going to do a military exercise with more than 20,000 troops, you have to give 21 days notice. Things like that. That is designed to reduce the concern of the other side that your military exercise is a preparation for invasion. And so far they haven't even been interested in that.
Yeah, I agree with what Bruce is saying. All I would add on this is that these exercises fulfill three functions. Right? They send a deterrence message to North Korea. They send a reassurance message to the Korean people. But they also ensure our readiness, that militaries need to practice. And these exercises are very important in maintaining that ability to respond to North Korean threats. But the other point I would make is that these are not digital, they're analog, in that it's not an on-off question. They can be tuned up, they can be tuned down. And our military leadership in USFK and in the Korean military have the ability to do more, do less, and they can make an assessment about what that would mean in terms of readiness and capability. So in any negotiation, you have to have concessions. You have to be willing to give something up. I agree with Bruce that this is not how you start. And I thought President Moon said it exactly right, is that these exercises are legal. Missile tests and nuclear tests are illegal. We're not going to trade legal things for illegal things. So it's not the right piece of the negotiation. But at some point, maybe it's with the winter training cycle, the ability to go from an 8 to a 6 or whatever it may be a piece of a negotiation, so long as we can maintain our readiness. But right now, that's not the conversation we're having. And I would also point out that the Chinese are offering things that they don't have. They don't have the ability to get the North Koreans to stop, and they don't have the ability to get us to change our behavior. So until they actually have leverage that they keep saying that they don't have, I'm not really sure what role in a negotiation they see for themselves.
Chris.
Thanks so much. Chris Nelson Report. Really great discussion. Thank you so much. Let me leap forward or back or sideways for a minute. A couple of weeks ago, former DNI Clapper, I think, surprised a lot of us by saying, we really do need to think about how to change the fundamental dynamic. Maybe we need to think about an intersection. This is before poor Otto Warmbier was, murdered or whatever. But if we'd had an intersection back when he was first arrested, might that have changed? You could see a lot of reasons for that. Is that the kind of thing that we should be thinking about of what we're trying to negotiate to get to change the nature of the dialogue and the nature of trust? So that's my first question. And what would have to be in place for us to do that, domestically, politically here, and what would Seoul think of it? And then Bruce said something that I've always found fascinating. There's a distinction between a preemptive attack and a preventative attack by us. Explain that. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. what would have to be about to happen that a preventative attack would be justified, and how would we coordinate that with the likely victims of the fallout, pun intended, the people of South Korea, and for that matter, Western Japan? So thank you. 2 questions. And thanks for the great discussion. Chris Nelson, also important, if I forgot to say that.
On the interest section, interesting idea. 1994 agreed framework was working towards full diplomatic relations. So sort of been there, done that. And there are several State Department people who were involved in the discussions at the time who would say, yeah, we were moving forward, and Pyongyang was the one who wouldn't allow a U.S. interest section in Pyongyang, and therefore they're not going to have one here. Also, apparently, they were balking at the price of real estate here. But so anyway, it was tried before it was derailed. That's not to say we can't do it again. But again, if they're not willing to have dialogue on so many other things, even on a less permanent basis than having a building in Pyongyang, I don't see that as the silver bullet. On the preventative and preemptive, I mean, maybe I'm just parsing words. I mean, I think everyone knows preemption and preventative. I was just trying to distinguish between that and preemption. Preemption is when, I mean, basically you have that poor intelligence analyst burst into the Oval Office saying, I think I've got really good information about, a certain number of North Korean missiles out in the field. The missiles have been erected, they've been fueled. We think, to the best of our ability, that they are tipped with nuclear warheads as opposed to, high explosive or nothing. We think, to the best of our ability, the leadership intention is to attack as opposed to a political signal or just routine military exercise. Over to you, sir. Do you press the button or not? I mean, that's extremely, difficult scenario to imagine. A preventative attack, I'm just thinking it's different from that, where you don't feel you're about to be attacked, but as some have been saying, we need to intercept a missile in midair, take it out on the launch stand or mobile missile launcher, or do whatever, mobile missile storage sites, mobile missile units, production facilities, research facilities, whatever their target set is, to prevent them from completing the development of the ICBM. The first one is difficult, but perhaps necessary if you feel you are about to be attacked with nuclear weapons. The second one, I argue against.
About your first question, to change the dynamics, actually, I don't think it's possible, because actually, North Korea wants to be recognized and accepted as a nuclear power. The purpose of negotiation or dialogue is to prevent North Korea from going to that direction. So I don't think there's any way for us to change North Korea's strategic calculus unless we put North Korean regime to the highest risk of regime survival. Maybe we have to think about but it will take a long time and have to have various measures, intel or information, military or soft type engagement. So that's why we need to have a rather comprehensive, gradual approach. But we should be ready to live with nuclear North Korea. That's why we need to have more robust deterrence and defense, and also the protection measures to be assured. And about the preemption and prevention, I'm against preventive strike. It's not possible to do so because of this. Whether we have a reliable intel on all the sites we have, that's not possible. Preemptive strike, maybe we can think of, but unless you are ready to use or go to the all-out war, it's almost impossible. Whether we can strike out 700 or 2,000 targets in North Korea, it's not possible to think of a preemptive strike. So maybe because actually the assumption of preemptive strike, North Korea is about to use this WMD vis-a-vis the United States or South Korea or Japan. So we have to take them out before they are being used. So North Korea will use their forces in other direction. The problem, as North Korea replace their liquid fuel missile with a solid fuel, we don't have much warning time. That's a problem of preemption nowadays. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality.
So just 2 real quick points to make, Chris. I agree that an interest section is an interesting idea. I also agree that the North Koreans probably aren't terribly interested in diplomacy right now. I expect once they feel that they have a credible capability, I think they'd be open for all the diplomacy in the world. But the point I wanted to make is that we need to get past the idea that diplomacy and engagement is a concession or some form of legitimation, that just the fact of sitting down with somebody and talking to them is somehow a concession. I think we need to get past that. And in terms of prevention, preemption, beyond the terrific comments of my colleagues, all I would add is that, hate to sound like the Obama guy, but I'm also not a lawyer, but preemption has a very firm basis in international law. Prevention does not.
I'm sorry. The next two questions from the students. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make sure the students had an opportunity to ask a question.
So I appreciate you preempting me.
That's legal.
He's preventing
All right.
us from losing.
All right, so the gentleman right here.
Hi, my name is Aman from the Center for Nonproliferation Studies. You guys talked a lot about diplomacy, and we had the great suggestion of the intersection and things like that. I'm curious, with the new administration, we've yet to appoint ambassadors to some of these countries, and we don't have an undersecretary for nuclear affairs. We're kind of lacking some of these pieces that are necessary for diplomacy. I would argue right now the U.S.'s best kind of plug into North Korea has been a former NBA champion with blonde hair. So, with that being said, should we have confidence in diplomacy given that we don't even have pieces in play to kind of carry out some of these things that we're talking about here?
Anyone? I can talk about Rodman if you want.
Okay, it is good for us to have ambassadors in place, but even with the absence, we can communicate with each other. White House, Blue House, and also cabinet. So that's a way to communicate. Of course, if there's someone like a deputy secretary, undersecretary, we will be in a better position to deal with more details. But unfortunately, we don't have it. I like to have the positions to be filled as soon as possible. That's a concern we have nowadays. Since Lippert left in January, for the past 7 months, no one in Korea to tell the public about what is U.S. position. So public diplomacy is a very important role of ambassadors, but nowadays that's a missing part.
I think that 2 points. I think that in the sort of popular imagination that when we don't have an ambassador appointed, we don't have an assistant secretary appointed, people imagine that there's like a staffer running into a room and talking to somebody, and the camera turns around, there's an empty chair there, right? And there's just nobody to talk to. The reality is that there are acting people in those. The acting Assistant Secretary of State, Susan Thornton, the acting Assistant Secretary of Defense, Dave Helvey, both former colleagues, good friends of mine, extremely capable people. So in terms of providing our leadership with the appropriate advice, with fulfilling that sort of internal role, the DCM in our embassy in Korea, another incredible diplomat. I think all of them are very capable of performing those jobs. I think there's two main challenges, and Kang Choi pointed to the first one, is that because they're not appointed by the president, because they're not confirmed by the Senate, they don't have that gravitas to be able to fulfill that public diplomacy role, which is an extremely important role, to the same degree as, say, an ambassador would, or a full assistant secretary. And the second is the internal bureaucratics of it, that having a presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed person matters in our system. It matters that this person sitting at the table advising the secretary was appointed by the president and confirmed by representatives of the American people. And so that causes challenges in our system. But I want to make sure that we're not ignoring the fact that we have actually incredibly talented, incredibly smart people working on these issues. That it's not just a bunch of empty chairs in there gathering dust.
Okay, so who was it?
Last question.
Good. Yeah. Okay, the last question.
These are a bunch of kids, they're high school students. High school.
So I'm Alex Goldbeck from the GW Pre-College Program. And throughout the discussion this morning, you've talked about possible solutions with creating a relationship with North Korea. But from your personal opinions, what do you think is the most viable solution to create a discussion with North Korea, create that relationship, and maybe stopping their nuclear program within the country?
Easy question.
Actually, I'm just thinking of when I was in high school, my biggest thought was how to sneak liquor out of my parents' liquor cabinet without them noticing.
It's the 21st century, Bruce.
Anyway, no, I mean, you have a very good question, and it's one people have been struggling with for decades. We disagree on how to solve the North Korean nuclear problems. I think the long-term thing is that you can't solve the North Korean nuclear problems, plural, human rights, nuclear, conventional threats, et cetera, with this regime. I think everyone thinks the regime has to be gone for you actually to have a solution. Now, that doesn't mean, okay, let's bring about the collapse of this regime, because whether you're successful or you fail, a lot of bad things can happen. The analogy I often use is we're on one side of the swamp, we don't like it. We want to be on the other side of the swamp where it's sunshine and light and a unified Korea that employs the Article 4 of the Constitution based on freedom and democracy and human rights and all that. But to get to the other side of the swamp, you have to get into the swamp with the alligators, and a lot of bad things can happen. So we're sort of, in a way, stuck here hoping to get there. The near term is, as I've advocated, I think you need to more fully enforce your own laws. You need to stop pulling your punches on enforcing your laws, not only against North Korean violators, but Chinese violators of U.S. law. You need to do the right thing of enforcing your laws and enforcing the UN resolutions, impose a penalty on those that violate the will of the international community. You need to put in place measures to make it harder for North Korea to import and export components for their prohibited nuclear and missile programs. And you're hoping by increasing the pressure, in addition to those four objectives, you're also getting them to alter their behavior. To come into compliance with their many, many, many previous pledges to denuclearize, as well as to come into compliance with international law and UN resolutions. I think you're more likely to get there with pressure and offers of engagement and diplomacy rather than just opening the doors to returning to the six-party talks. And I agree with Abe. Having diplomats meet with each other is not a victory for them. That's why we have diplomats, is to talk to people you don't want to bring home to mom. But I would distinguish between diplomacy and, have poor Jae-in go every Monday morning for a staff meeting in Pyongyang, but don't go back to formal negotiations until North Korea at least gives you a 1 in a trillion chance that they will denuclearize. They're not even giving us that now.
Okay, I used to make a joke about this. Unless we have a leader whose last name is not Kim, it is not possible to think about the denuclearized North Korea. I'm serious, because actually in their constitution it says North Korea is a de facto nuclear power. And also when Kim Jong-un took office, he said, one of the biggest achievements of Kim family is a nuclear and missile program. So that's one of the reasons he actually inherited the leadership. I'm just what we call 백두 혈통. So that's one of the legitimizing factor to Kim Jong-un be recognized as a leader. So he's fulfilling his father's and grandfather's dream of having nuclear power and also completing the program. So I'm pessimistic about the future of the viable option. So what would be viable option? Maybe you have to think about robust deterrence and also the humanitarian engagement to bring about some changes in North Korean people's mind and information influx. And I think that I can think of all this. Also, human rights issue also is the one we have to press North Korea on. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I think this has been a really great conversation. If you'll join me in thanking all of our presenters for a great day. Thanks.